in Dr. Lee's lab. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and the first half of my email address is in my name, ARH268. I'll pass it to Jeremy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Keys. Pronouns he, him. I am in the Lammerding Lab, and I am a fifth-year student, so getting up there. And yeah, I study cancer cell migration. And yeah, so feel free to ask me any questions you have about Lammerding Lab. Adrian?
So I'm Adrian Shimpey. I'm also a fifth-year student. He, him pronouns. I work in Claudia Fischbach's lab, and so what I study is the role of cell ECM interactions, and in particular with respect to cancer and the cancer stem cell-like phenotype. So.
And I didn't mention what I study, so I'll go ahead and throw that in now. Dr. Lee's lab is a vasculature on a chip lab. So I look at lymphatic vasculature disorders and modeling them with in vitro microfluidic chip models. And I'm also starting some projects looking at glymphatic disorders such as Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases, and making microfluidic in vitro chip models for those as well. And I guess just to break the ice, I'm originally from Florida, and I got my bachelor's in biomedical engineering from the University of Florida.
How's everyone liking the virtual visit so far? Interesting topics, cool professors, we're all the best, of course.
I recognize some of these names from either BMES booth work that I did in October or other recruitment events that I did, like Coulter. I recognize your name for sure. Welcome back. Congratulations, everyone, on being offered.
Yeah, so is there anything in particular you guys want to hear about? So we all have, I guess Jeremy and I we all actually overlap a bit. But is there anything in particular, with respect to our research work, techniques, just general topics you would like to hear about, or just generally how the labs are or stuff like that? Is there anything in particular?
I've got a question. What was one thing that you were guys expecting before you went to Cornell, and what was the outcome when you were there?
Something we were expecting in terms of research availability, core facilities, the weather of Ithaca, anything in particular?
Nothing in particular, but in general, what was I'm here in Texas, and it's 60 something right now. So
very jealous.
That was, yeah.
It's about 30 right now.
And my family back in Florida is in 70, almost 80-degree weather right now. So definitely adjusting to the cold was a little bit of a challenge, but I managed to do it within a year or so. I just bought a lot of coats, a lot of jackets, and a lot of sweaters. In terms of a research expectation coming to Cornell, part of the reason why I made this decision to come here is because it has a really friendly and collaborative environment. The entire department and our graduate field faculty with the rest of the university are just really open to collaborations with each other. And sure enough, during my first year, I was approached by one of my committee members, Dr. Nozomi Nishimura, to do a collaborative fellowship together. So I'm doing a fellowship with Chris Bronkhorst of the Schaefer-Nishimura group on creating a glymphatic chip right now, and I was able to get a Mung fellowship for that. So that expectation was definitely met. Collaborations are abound at Cornell.
Yeah, I mean, I would say everybody here is just very genuine and straightforward, and I mean, what you see is what you get. I mean, I'm sure you've heard from my advisor at this point. Jan is one of the, nicest, most entertaining people to work around. I think everybody can pretty much vouch for that. In terms of the weather in Ithaca, I mean, I'm from New England, so I'm pretty much used to it at this point. There's really only like usually 1 month, maybe month and a half, 2 months where the weather is kind of miserable. But other than that, Ithaca is actually very nice. I mean, in the spring and the summer, it's, very nice place to hike, very nice place to, go out to the wineries along either of the lakes and just, hang out and chill. So definitely pretty good. In terms of research, one of the things that's very appealing about Cornell is the availability of core facilities in addition to the, collaborations, which just abound everywhere. Because a lot of universities, you need to sort of like outsource certain projects to, get certain things done. But, our lab does a lot of work with microfluidics. So what we do is we have the Center for Nanofabrication here, and we can just, have some students trained over there, design our own microfluidic devices, bring them back to the lab, and yeah, really simplifies the process. And we have, a basement full of, high-tech microscopes whenever you want to do really involved, high definition imaging. So those are a lot of the things that were really appealing to me in terms of the research available here. I'm sure Adrian can touch on a lot of those similar points.
Yeah, a lot of similar points, and sort of like reiterating this, it is a very collaborative environment. So like my project, I collaborate with people in the chemical engineering department, molecular biology department. I collaborate with people within our department as well. The nice thing is that, especially in Weil Hall, we have like a very open lab layout. So like I constantly am talking to, like my lab is right next to the Fischbach, Cosgrove lab, and also to the NASA lab and Putnam lab. And like I joke with them as I'm doing work all the time during that. And when I have questions regarding some of the stuff that I've been doing that pertain to some of the things that Ben's lab does, then I'll go talk to the Cosgrove lab about some of the things that I'm doing. So again, it's a very, very open collaborative environment. And as Jeremy was alluding, we have all these core facilities too. And this was actually one of the things I was not ever expecting when I came out here, before like I started doing the visits. I did not really expect to be as well trained in using a lot of the facilities available to us. And like a lot of the staff at the core facilities, like they're super nice, they're very informative and tell you a lot of information, like especially like talking to people down at the imaging core, like as Jeremy alluded, with all our fancy microscopes. I know a lot more about imaging than I ever thought I would ever know having come here. And then talking with the sequencing core, I know a lot more about sequencing than I ever thought I was going to know. So like all the cores here are very, very informative, and everybody appreciates them.
Touching back on the CNF, because it's used for nanoscale fabrication, so we use it for making our chip molds. I believe Belinda's on the call, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a virtual tour option if you're interested in seeing the facilities, which are amazing. So I recommend that if that's something you'd be interested in. More questions?
How did you guys go about doing lab rotations your first semester?
Who wants to open? I guess I'll open. Yeah, so when I chose Cornell, I actually didn't really expect to end up in the lab that I was, but I had a broad range of interests. So for those that don't know, I actually come from Utah, and I actually studied synthetic biology at Utah. So I was very much in that field, but now I actually study more on the cellular level rather than doing genetic circuits. So I had a very broad range. So I actually talked with Alana Brito, Ben Cosgrove, Claude, my advisor, obviously. And how I set up my rotations was I was shadowing and going to meetings, but it's a very flexible system here, especially in our department, where there's not really like you make it how you want it to be. So if you want to have overlapping ones, which I ended up having overlapping rotations where I was sitting in on meetings during Cosgrove lab, with the Cosgrove lab, but then I was doing that as well with the Brito lab and the Fischbach lab, but they all fortunately had different timings, so I was able to do it. But I set it up so that I could sort of see all of them at the same time, but it's not like set that you do it that way.
Yeah, different people sort of approach it in different ways because it pretty much all occurs during the first semester typically. Obviously, things are more complicated with, COVID stuff, but hopefully that will be like basically tamped down by the time you guys get here. On a slightly optimistic note, I suppose. But yeah, I was like pretty determined to get into Jan's lab when I got here. So I sort of like casually looked at a couple of other labs, but was principally just doing my rotation in the Lammerding lab until I felt, sufficiently convinced that it was the right fit for me. So certainly lucky in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, like Adrian said, it's, a pretty informal, relaxed system. Most advisors are cool with you just like hanging out and checking out the lab, getting to know everyone in the lab, because that's, as important, if not more important than the advisor, is the people you're going to be working around and with. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to add.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more Jeremy style in that I specifically knew I wanted to go into the Lee lab because I wanted to do the on-chip work. So I actually committed to my lab very early on in my first semester. Not necessarily a great idea, but I've been very happy with my decision. So it worked out well for me. You should look at other labs, and it's good to use that rotation time, even if you're like certain that you know what person you're looking for. Try to build a committee by getting to know other faculty member or field faculty members. And then kind of building on that, like they said, most of it's done in that first semester. I'm one of the officers on our graduate chapter of the Biomedical Engineering Society, and we try to host kind of panels like these again in the fall so that we can kind of refresh you on what's offered and you can get to interface with more grad students, especially if we are going to continue to be in like a hybrid sort of format, partially online. That's going to be a good way to kind of get to know your fellow students in the department and maybe even start some collaborations.
And I can speak a little bit about how some of the rotations, hopefully it won't be this way in the fall, but if they still stay semi-virtual, my roommate was a first year, so I know how some of the rotations went. A lot of it was also like a lot of professors kept it virtual, but if some labs were more willing to let people come in to shadow with 6 feet of distance, of course, which makes it a little difficult to see and learn, but a lot of it was sitting on meetings and getting to know people. A lot of labs, from what I heard, like my lab was doing this as well, also had socials with prospective students. So like, again, like the important thing about rotations is figuring out, do you get along with the people in there? Like the research is really interesting as well, but a big part of it is figuring out, these are the people you're going to be working with for the next 4, 5, 6 years. Depending on how fast you do it. But that's like the big important thing. Like research is fun, but people make it a big difference too.
I know one of the reasons why I chose my lab is I was specifically looking for on-chip work. So I was a little bit more flexible in what diseases I'd be working with because I know what skill set I wanted to develop. And I want to be a professor, and I know I want to do brain on a chip as my eventual laboratory goal. So I figured I could always get a little bit more brain biology through my postdoctoral work. But I really wanted to get a solid background in working on a chip. And that's part of the reason why I chose the Lee lab to work specifically with that vasculature on a chip device.
I have like a quick question, I guess, about like academia and professorship. So like I'm definitely like very interested in that, even though I'm still a senior. But just like wondering like how you feel like Cornell like best fits that for like pursuing something in academia.
We actually have a lot of different ways in which we do that. I'm a younger student, so I'm going to defer to Jeremy and Adrian first if they want to handle this answer, and then I'll chime in if I have anything to add.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of resources in terms of developing the teaching aspect of it. There's something called the CTI, the Center for Teaching Innovation, and they pretty consistently hold workshops which either develop, specific skills, lecturing style. I think there's a class called like improvisational acting for teachers, and it's held within like one of the theater departments because, that is a part of teaching. I'm taking a class right now on sort of like preparing teaching skills and like talking about learning theory as it relates to teaching in higher education. It's a very chill class. It's like super interdepartmental. So it's not like specifically biomedical engineering, but it's more just about teaching in general. So there's all kinds of different things like this, in addition to the sort of standard, you have to do a TA-ship at least once over the course of being here. But yeah, just tons of opportunities for professional development in that avenue. And then, yeah, if you're going to be a professor, you also have to be familiar with, grant applications and all of that business, which, obviously all of our professors are really excellent resources for telling you how to do that because that is their job. But yeah, is there anything you wanted to add, Adrian?
Yeah, and so in addition to that, there, like beyond CTI, there are other programs on campus as well. So some of it's focused on more of the communication side, and some of it's also focused on building up that your package, your job package, basically. So one of them, for example, is Next Gen, which is targeted more towards underrepresented minorities, but it focuses on helping you to build your teaching statement, your diversity statement, your research statement. It's very focused on that. And there are other resources just like that if it's more on the communication side. So like a big part of academia is also communicating, but Cornell has a very nice program known as ComSciCon that is part of like the national network, I guess is the best way to describe it, which talks about how to communicate science in general to both lay audience and also to a more technical audience, because I did that program and like you learn skills about it. It's like a boot camp kind of thing, but even beyond academia, like that's applicable. And we also have plenty of resources that go beyond academia profile, especially if you want to go more towards governmental and policy based, I don't know what I'm trying to say, career, that's the word. We have boot camps for that as well. Chris Schaefer, does he still do the boot camp? I'm pretty sure. Yes, he helps do that. We also have programs like built for various ones. I'm blanking on the acronym now.
CERTL?
Hmm?
Is it CERTL?
No, there is that too. But there's another, they changed their name recently.
Oh, it's no longer BEST.
Yeah, it's no longer BEST, but BEST.
Oh,
It's beyond.
Yeah, so that one's for for people that are not interested in academia, going the academia route, but rather for more industry, government, etc. route as well. So like regardless of your career path, there are plenty of resources on here to work on it.
As I figured, they covered most of the things that I would have talked about. There's CERTL, which I kind of threw in there, and that's another teaching leadership sort of resource. And then there's also a lot of especially right now, because it's finally being made aware in the United States how important this is, there's a lot of education on equitable inclusion and diversity. So I know before I became a TA, I took it upon myself to take the massive online open course titled Teaching and Learning in a Diverse Classroom. And that really prepared me to be an inclusive TA this semester. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to really better yourself no matter what your career path is. We're getting close to the end of time.